everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well and I hope you all had a great Christmas and New Year. So in today's tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to make this really easy tube top with this knit look stitch. This is completely beginner friendly, so let's get into the tutorial. Okay, so for this project I have got a couple of skeins of this majestic chunky yarn. This is the cream colour and I've got about 2 skeins of this, but I don't think that I will be using 2 full skeins, maybe 1.5 if that. So depending on your size you may need 2 skeins, maybe 3 skeins, but for about a size small to medium I would say about 1.5. I'm also going to be using this 4.5mm hook. And then you'll need some scissors, and then you're going to want to take your measurements for your top. So we're basically going to be chaining up the height of the top, so that's going to be how long the top sits on you. So I want mine to be roughly about 11 to 11.5 inches. So I worked out that 40 chains is enough for that. And then you just want to measure around your bust. So my measurement around my bust is about 32 inches, so I'm going to be making as many rows as I need to get to 32 inches in width. So you just want to take your colour that you're going to be using for your top and you want to make a slip knot. And we're going to be chaining up the measurement of the length of the top, so that's not the width of 32 inches, that's the height that we want it to be. And I'm going to be making a chain that is going to be equal to the height of the top that I want. So I want about 11 to 11.5 inches, so I'm going to be chaining about 40. Once you've got your number of chains, we are now going to be doing our first row, which is going to be the yarn over slip stitch, and we're going to be working in the back bumps. So the back bumps are basically when you flip your chain over, you'll see these horizontal lines going across the back of each chain, and that's what we're going to be working our first row into. So rather than going into our chain and picking up just like that top loop, we're going to be flipping the chain over and going into that back bump. So for the yarn over slip stitch, it is like a hybrid of a single crochet and a half double crochet, so it's nice and simple, and this stitch is going to repeat for our entire pattern, and for our following rows we are going to be doing a single crochet at either end to keep our edges nice and neat. But for our first row I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to flip that second chain over to the back and insert my hook into that second back bump right there, like that, and then I'm going to yarn over and pull through that back bump loop like that. You should have 3 loops on the hook, and now you're going to pull your first loop through your bottom 2 loops as if it were sort of like a slip stitch, like that. Okay, so that's your yarn over slip stitch. So I'm going to do that one more time, yarn over, and I'm now going into my next back bump, inserting my hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through that back bump, and then I'm going to pull my first top loop through these bottom 2 loops, like that. So now I'm just going to continue that all the way across the row until I get to the end, and then I will show you how to do our second row. Okay, so I've now reached the end of the row. This is what it should look like, and we're now going to start our second row. So I'm going to be doing chain 1 and turning the work for each time we enter a new row. If you don't prefer to do that and you just want to turn the work, you can. However, I do think that the chain 1 adds to the stretch of the stitch, so I just recommend it a bit more. So I'm just going to chain 1 and then turn the work around. So we're now working along the back of the work, and I'm always going to start my rows from this point forward with a single crochet in the first stitch. So I'm going into my first stitch right here, and I'm going to yarn over and pull through, and then yarn over and pull through both loops, like that. Now I'm going to do the yarn over slip stitch all the way across into just the front loop, so just the loop closest to you right here. So I'm going into my next front loop and I'm going to do my yarn over slip stitch, like that, and then I will go into my next front loop and do it again and complete it all the way across. And then once you get to your very last stitch, that's this one right here, you want to do a single crochet in that stitch. So I'll meet you back once I get to the end of the row, and then I will show you row 3. Okay, so this is what it looks like once you have finished the end of your second row, and then for your third row you're just going to chain 1 and turn the work, Now we're working back along the front, and we're going to be doing a single crochet into the first stitch, just like we did at the beginning of row 2. And then we are going to be doing the yarn over slip stitch, but this time in the back loop rather than the front loop. So I'm grabbing the one furthest away from me, even though in the previous row that is technically the exact same loop. It now just becomes the back loop because it is the one furthest away from us rather than the front loop, which is the one closest to us. So I'm going to do my yarn over slip stitch, but this time grabbing the back loop, like that. I'm going to repeat that all the way across into each back loop this time, and as you can see, once you have done a few of them, you can see how the knit stitch is starting to form. So you want to complete that all the way across in the back loop, and then do your single crochet as normal at the end. And then from that point forward, you just want to repeat row 2 and then row 3 and continue alternating between row 2 and row 3 until you reach your width measurement of your bust. So that is the circumference around your bust. So for me that's 32 inches. So it's nice and simple. Now you just have to repeat your second and third row. So that is either going to be doing your yarn over slip stitch in the front loop or the back loop. But just as a reminder, that is technically the exact same loop. It's just that depending on whatever side you're working on, it's either the one closest to you or the one furthest away from you. Okay, so I've just completed my last row fitting. So you don't want to fasten off once you've done your final row, but we are going to be flipping the work onto the inside out. So you want to flip your work onto the inside out and then kind of fold it in half so that you've got both of your seams lined up with each other. And we're basically going to be doing the yarn over slip stitch, but we're going to be attaching the seams together. So if your working yarn isn't kind of in the area of where you would normally work, so for me I'm left-handed, so I need it to be on the left side to work across, you can just kind of like loop it over to the other side and then continue working. So I'm just going to, as if I would start a new row, chain 1, and then my work is now turned to the back of the work. And I'm going to basically be doing pretty much what I've done for all of my other rows, except I'm going to be doing the yarn over slip stitch on the inside loops only of the kind of centre stitches. So I will start off with my single crochet into the first stitch, and I'm also going to be grabbing that back stitch as well. I'm just going to loop in this tail so that I can crochet that together. So just single crocheting those stitches together, and then I'm going to do my yarn over slip stitch all the way across, but I'm only grabbing the inside loops. So what I mean by the inside loops is the back loop of the front panel and the front loop of the back panel. So I'm just going to yarn over, insert my hook into the back loop of the next stitch, and I'm going to grab the front loop of the back stitch. So the next stitch on the back panel, I'm going to grab the front loop, it's the one closest to you. So as you can see, when you line up your stitches, you'll notice that there are these 2 inside stitches, and that's what we're grabbing. And then you just want to complete your yarn over slip stitch as normal. So yarn over and pull through both of these inside loops as if it were just one loop, like that, and you'll have 3 loops on your hook, and you want to pull through your first loop through those bottom 2 loops, like that. So it's literally the exact same, but we're just going through 2 loops instead of 1. So I'm going to go into the next stitch, yarn over, insert my hook into the back loop of the next stitch and the front loop of the next stitch on the back panel, so like that, yarn over and pull through those middle loops, so those inside loops, 3 loops on the hook, and pull your first loop through your bottom 2 loops, like that. So now you just want to continue that yarn over slip stitch all the way across into the inside loops, and when you get to your final stitch, which is where your single crochet would go, you want to single crochet into that front panel stitch and that back panel stitch, so crocheting them together just like we did at the beginning. And then once you have finished that, you just want to chain 1 and fasten off. Okay, so once you have fastened off your work, you can now flip it onto the right side out, and you'll notice that the edges might start to have curled, and that's completely fine. It's just because the stitch is quite tight, but it's also stretchy, so it just kind of has that natural spring to it. But if you do want to kind of fix this, there are 2 things that you can do. One that I'm going to show you now, and one that you can do as your kind of final step. So the first thing you can do is to just do like a row of any stitch that you like, just to neaten out the edges, and this should hopefully uncurl everything a little bit. So you can do like a half double crochet or a single crochet, whatever you want. That's basically just a row going all around the top edge and the bottom edge, and then later on, if it's still kind of not uncurled like you want it to, you can also steam your work or block it depending on what yarn you're using. Because I'm using acrylic yarn, it doesn't really work to do kind of a wet block. So the other alternative you can do is to steam it, because acrylic responds much better to heat. Obviously I recommend that you do this like with caution, because obviously steam is very hot, but basically you can just like steam over the garment and sort of flatten it out like that, and just do it gradually, and you should notice that it uncurls a bit. But bear in mind that when you do block your work, whether that's wet block or steam blocking, your work's going to get bigger, so your size might change. So you might only need to do it for a few seconds, because you don't want your size to change too much. That being said, if you did make your garment slightly smaller than your actual bust measurement, then wet blocking or steam blocking should be fine, and it should just stretch out to your normal size, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to do a row around the edges. And like I said, you can do any stitch you want. I'm going to be doing half double crochet, that's just what I want to do. And I'm going to start at the back of the work, so where the seam is of where we yarn over slip stitched the seams together. So I'm just going to insert my hook kind of at the top right there, and I've got my slip knot, and I'll just pull that through. Just going to pull that through the stitch and then chain 1 to attach it. So I'm just going to do a round of half double crochets, so that's just 1 half double crochet in roughly each space, and making sure that I evenly space it out. And while you are doing that, you can also kind of tuck in your ends. So I'm going to just yarn over and insert my hook into that same stitch that I pulled the slip knot through. Just going to tuck those ends over the hook and do my half double crochet. So I'm going to yarn over and pull through 3 loops on the hook, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops like that. So I'm going to do my next half double crochet, so I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook into the next sort of space, again tucking those ends over the hook, yarn over and pull through 3 loops on the hook, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So now I'm just going to continue that all the way around to the top edge, and once I get to the beginning again, I'm just going to slip stitch into that first half double crochet that we made, so that's that one right there. And you can mark it with a stitch marker if you are unsure of which one to slip stitch into. And then you want to repeat the exact same thing on the bottom edge, so you just want to flip it upside down and repeat the exact same thing. And I will be starting on that back seam, so I'm just going to continue that now. And this is what the final result is looking like. I'm really happy with how it came out and how the stitch looks. I think it's got such a cool effect to it, and it just really adds something different to your winter wardrobe. It's also really cozy as well. So I hope you guys all have an amazing rest of your day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye guys.